Hello and welcome to a special edition of Inside the Burrow presented by the FAU Owl's Nest. We are just a few days away from National Signing Day, so we're going to do a special recruiting episode here for everyone in Owl Nation.
Actually, about the time it releases, it'll be tomorrow.
Signing day it'll be 1 day away from National Signing Day. That's Shane. You guys know him. And you guys know Jake as well from the Palm Beach Post. Jake, say hello.
Hi. Hi is better than hello. Signing day is upon us. I'm so excited.
Signing day is upon us.
I'm excited for once.
There you go. Yeah, so we can just dive right into this, guys. Jake, what makes you so excited about this year's class?
Well, I mean, we start to get over the stain of last year, 5 and 7. A lot of guys graduate, a few guys transfer out, and we get to see, okay, what's this next generation going to be? Who are these guys that are going to be here for 3, 4, 5 years? We already have a few guys on campus. We have a few guys who have committed in the past few days. I'm sure at this point that by the time this podcast releases, we may even have another commit or another kid. So it's exciting. It's especially now with social media, it's very down to the wire. You see guys that maybe have been committed to one school for a while, realize that FAU is the right choice for them, for their family, and then they flip, or vice versa. You might see somebody who's committed to FAU flip to USF, FIU, another school. So it's exciting. It's a race.
Shane, what makes you most excited about this class?
This is Lane's best class. They've made a lot of dividends in the high school world down here. It's a lot of stuff has really paid off. Like we've seen so far, there's only 2 JUCO players. We'll kind of get into that in a little bit. But this is by far Lane's best class. There was really good football players. Anyone thinks the 5 and 7 season had anything to do with recruitment? It didn't. It didn't. I mean, this is gonna be a really strong class.
Okay.
There's some players here at the end though, and I'm gonna put out kind of a prediction thing in the nest right after we're filming this tonight. On some players we'll talk about that are coming down to the wire that could really push this class, and obviously it'll be a 1 or 2 top class in the Conference USA.
I love it.
I agree with Shane. I think that you really look at this class, and it has shades of what Charlie's final classes were, especially that 2016 one. Big focus not only on Palm Beach, Broward, and Miami-Dade, but that Jacksonville area, that Orlando area. Lane, for the first time, is really taking advantage of in-state.
Whoa, Jake, you just skipped over a huge city, my man.
And Tampa.
Thank you.
And Tampa. But the first 2 years, you had some in-state guys in there. TJ Young last year from Palm Beach Lakes. BJ Etienne from Boynton, who played the senior year at St. Thomas. He started last year. Obviously, a couple Orlando guys. But for the most part, it's been those out-of-state JUCO guys. There have been a couple high school guys from Alabama. Zion Gilbert comes to mind.
Yep.
A couple Texas guys. But the majority of this class is in-state, and a lot of that in-state is South Florida. Mm-hmm. And it's good to see, both from the university point of view and just FAU going back to the roots of recruiting locally, building those pipelines.
They still really – Lane says this. He goes where he needs to. And in an article written by Richard Johnson for SB Nation a couple years ago, Lane was quoted saying that he thinks Florida's oversaturated a bit. And it is. In the recruiting world, Southern Miss came down here last week and offered 120 kids in a single week. Okay? They're just blanketing offers. So it is oversaturated. That's why Clint Trickett should get a lot of credit. And we'll see with a couple kids here at the end. He recruits a lot of Georgia and a lot of Alabama in the Panhandle. Mm-hmm. And we're going to get some strong players out of that area. So, yes, I know the whole South Florida thing is great, but FAU, more than some other schools, is not afraid to stretch his legs and go get a player where he needs to. And I think there's an advantage to that. I think the whole football in paradise thing sells a lot better to those kids.
Over Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, we've had 3 receivers from Texas on campus in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So I think they go where they need to go to find players.
I think part of why the in-state recruiting matters, especially in those three major local counties, is just Lane really hasn't done it much in his first 2 years. You know, you think of his first class, you had Jordan Morrell, you had BJ Etienne, and then last year you had TJ Young, but there really haven't been many. You have to exclusively focus on that group. I just think about how many guys Lane recruited from out-of-state JUCO colleges that either never saw the field or never lived up to expectations.
Well, I mean, JUCOs they've only taken 3 JUCO kids this cycle, all at positions of need, which is fine.
Yeah.
I'll take, you always need. It's hard to find a lineman in G5 football, especially when you need someone that can plug in right away.
Yep.
And they got a lot of the JUCO guys on campus early, so they weren't taking those. Oh, this kid's really talented. Let's take a chance and get him in here, and maybe he might come in July, and maybe he might come in August. And we've seen even when those kids arrive in the summer, they don't tend to pay off.
Right.
So they got both Exon and his name is blank in my mind. The receiver on campus early,
Adrian Bryant,
which is huge, which is something they have not had with other JUCOs. Hopefully that pays off a little bit more. One of the first questions someone asked on the Nest.
Yep.
Lane did say early on that he wanted to come in and fill out the roster and then transition to more high school recruiting as they filled out the roster. I think Charlie left a lot of good players when he left. We know that. There was a lot of good players, but there was also just as many holes. So, for every where there was an Aziz or a Motor or a Shelton Lewis, there was some major holes out there, and Lane was trying to fill those quickly to win. One of their best recruiters is leaving. Keando Hudson was a player favorite. I don't know how it's going to affect it with it being so soon to signing day, but I talk to a lot of these kids, and it's Coach Key. But they're losing great recruiter.
So we were talking about this a little bit. We talked about the question that was posed to you. So I want to give a shout out to AlPT15. It was his question. And the question was, do you guys see special emphasis on high school players over JUCO players, which Lane kind of went heavy for, his previous 2 recruiting classes? Do you think that's a coincidence, or do you think it's the beginning of a trend? Shane, you said it's because Lane was saying that he just wanted to plug some holes his first few years, and then he really wants to lay the foundation for 4-year, 3-year recruits. Recruits are going to stay here for that long to build a program. Jake, what do you think? Do you think this is a coincidence, or do you think this is the beginning of something?
I think it's a little bit of both. I was thinking about this earlier. I think the trend is more that they're going after more guys that aren't these Power 5 cast-offs. And it's nothing against the DeAndre Johnsons, nothing against the Tim Bonners or the DeAndre McNeils. But Wagner played well last year, but Marcel Solo got hurt. Deshaun Holmes really didn't play much in the grand scheme of things.
Mm-hmm.
But Levante Epson started his career at JUCO. Now, he was committed, I think it was to Ole Miss at one point, but he never enrolled there. Caleb Price, 2 years at Hutchinson. Adrian Bryant, I think he only played 1 year at JUCO, 1 or 2. Point is, these are quote-unquote true JUCO guys. So they're still going to have to deal with the transition of going from JUCO to D1. But Lane's just not going after the uber-talented guy when there could be, like we were talking about, maybe the guy's grades aren't ready. Maybe there's a character risk. And I will give the guys that Lane brought in credit. There were no issues with DeAndre Johnson, no issues with DeAndre McNeil in terms of, criminal stuff, legal stuff, academic stuff, suspensions.
Yeah.
But Lane's going after guys that maybe just were under-recruited and they slipped through the cracks, and he's trying to make sure that he can snag them at the right time.
Yeah, I think there's also a lot of them have a chance to kind of prove this year. I think this year's a lot for some of the guys you mentioned. Tim Bonner, I thought at the end of the year was playing his best football for FAU.
Yep,
I think the North Texas game, the La Tech game, he really started to break out. We started to see, but a lot of guys just haven't worked out. I think I made the post a a few months ago, or it was in the middle of the season. I think.
Right. I remember. I know what post you're talking about, and you're right.
One has been a really solid starter. I think No Jefferson is going to be a major contributor. He was playing well and he got banged up. We'll kind of see with these guys, but again, this really kind of reflects like a really Charlie Partridge class. I think there's a little bit more, out of state talent in there. We could kind of jump into what players stand out immediately, which I think are going to go. My favorite player so far, class early on, and there's a few more commitments, is the running back from Hoover High School, Larry McMahon.
Yep.
In my article later, we're talking about Ty Edwards, Clever Cook, who's on campus. They're replacing Motor and Gareth White, and they're bringing some really talented players to do it. A couple of them emerged. I think I saw Larry play a couple times on TV, and someone was asking for some comparisons. I say the Ivory Edgecombe, but like way nastier, would be an old Owls player to kind of compare him to. He does everything well, and when you kind of do everything well and you're well coached and you come from Hoover High School, I could kind of see him standing out. He's one of my most excited. Someone else who jumps off kind of the video for me was Joe Lewis, who wasn't highly recruited, but I think he's going to fit the scheme really well. We haven't been able to confirm if they're really going to run the 3-3-5 or this 4-2-5. They're very similar, kind of getting into really deep details, X's and O, depending on how you stand up the defensive lineman. But kind of this extra safety linebacker type position they like to use. We're going to see Hazif probably play a lot this year. I could see Joe Lewis kind of moving up quickly into that position. And also today's commitment. I'll finish that. Ian Cole didn't put up huge numbers, but he's 6'2", 6'3", big receiver. I think at the very minimum, you could see him maybe being a red zone target early in his career.
Absolutely.
I like Ian Cole a lot. Him and McCammon, I think, two great gets. I spoke to McCammon's high school coach, Josh Niblett, last week. And Niblett was explaining to me why McCammon is the best running back he's ever coached. He was saying just the way that he uses his size and his acceleration, his agility. And he said to me, he's not going to say a whole lot, but he's going to do everything he needs to on the field and more. I said, hey, I covered Motor for 3 years. It sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Another guy, we're on the focus of running back, is Kelvin Dean, who, similar to Motor, I hate making this comparison, played at a smaller school and put up video game numbers.
Actually, I was going to ask you guys, which player would you think can contribute right away? It could be a big part of the 2019 team. And you guys just hit the nail on the head because I agree with you guys. McCammon from Hoover, Cole from is it Niceville? Yeah. I don't know. Thank you, Shane. What about Trayvon Thomas, D end from Edison, Uncle Luke's boy?
Yeah, that'll be interesting. That'll be interesting just because the defensive line has so many questions. What's Layden McCarthy's role after he was kind of an underwhelming 2018, I think, for him, just with how much growth he showed 2 years ago. Tim Bonner, who played really well at the end of the year, can he translate that to an entire 12-game year? What does Noah Jefferson do? What do the defensive tackles do? Could Trayvon Thomas maybe slide in and get some interior line reps? So there's so many question marks there. Hopefully by the time that those guys arrive in the summer, that we'll know, okay, what is Charles Cameron going to contribute? What is if Ray Ellis gets approved for a 6th year, which isn't done yet, what can Ray Ellis do?
Trayvon Thomas depends on how quickly they find him a position. Kind of from speaking to him, he's that kind of defensive end, outside linebacker type. He's extremely talented.
Yeah.
Obviously, you see the rank. He's one of the best players in this class. How quickly they settle him into where they're going to play him on the field is how quickly I think they'll get the position. And are we doing 3-3-5?
Yeah.
what was played at UNC Charlotte, or we do again. I think how fast they find him a position. And I think a lot of these guys, you notice the theme kind of a lot of these, especially in the defensive backfield. I know they mentioned it with Joe Lewis and Ash. There's a lot of these kind of linebacker, safety, hybrid guys, which screams to me, you think of players we have now that they've used a lot. It feels like, I've mentioned who I think is going to have a huge year next year. I think Hazif and these kind of guys who can line up and do both. Rashad Smith is an underside linebacker that plays really well in coverage. And there's kind of a lot of these type of hybrid guys. You could see the type of player schematically they were going for.
And that works when you're playing a lot of these spread shotgun offenses that you're going to see in Conference USA. That works perfectly. Use that 4-2-5. Use a hybrid instead of using your traditional nickel. That way they can plug the middle if they have to.
What is FAU's deepest position typically? And you recruit Florida, you could find a ton of DBs and linebackers in this state.
Yeah.
So if you look at it and say, well, we're probably the deepest, and you look at our recruiting rankings right now, what a lot of these positions these guys play, you say, how can we get most of these guys on the field?
Yeah.
What formation allows us to get our best players on the field? It's tough for G5 schools to find defensive linemen. A lot of them are developmental type projects. I think, Bradley, the kid they got out of Deltona this week, the basketball player, is like that. Your defensive linemen, even the big schools, UM and stuff, it's hard to find these type of, you're looking for a type of frame to add weight on it, or, you're looking at certain type of athletic. Those guys are usually more developmental. In Florida, you could usually find DBs that can play right away.
Yeah.
So I think they're trying to get a lot of these guys on the field early.
Jake, what do you think? Do you think this is a trend, getting all these DBs, as many as we can right now, to maybe set up a future change in our defensive formation?
Maybe. I mean, obviously they lost a lot of guys. Jalen Young graduates. Shelton Lewis graduates.
Yeah.
Herb Miller graduates. Chris Tooley's going to be a senior. So I think part of it is just you want to build up more depth. And don't forget, you have guys like Armani Adams, TJ Young. What are they going to do next year? Correll Smith is still fairly young.
He played really well at the end of the year, too.
Devon Brown, maybe another guy that can find reps. So that'll be Amon Ross. So that's gonna be one of the main goals.
Really good.
That's gonna be that. I think has to be a goal throughout the spring and summer, is evaluate your defensive back depth. See who can be that hybrid guy, and see also who could be your full-time safety in a couple years, who could be your full-time cornerback in a couple years. Who knows? James Pierre, if he has a really good year this year with his size.
We could talk about this in a spring preview, and I think for DBs, especially with a lot of this talent coming in, I think it's a big year for some of these guys to prove. Deshaun Moss and stuff. If they want playing time, if they don't have a good spring, they're going to risk, with a lot of talent coming in, them not being able to hold on to those positions. And I will say this, we talked a lot about the running backs. FAU's going to have a loaded running back coming class in, and none of them enrolling early. And it's going to be kind of that, not final spring, but, I think for a lot of guys like Charles, Tisdale, there's not a ton in the backfield. B.J. Emmons, if he wants to make an impact early, they need to make
a Mason, yeah.
Because if they do not make a statement during the spring, there's going to be a lot of talented young running backs coming in. And I promise you, one or two of those kids is going to explode early. Motor, I remember how good he played really only his last 4 games.
Right.
But he was also playing behind Buddy Howell, who was really good at the time.
Yep.
The running backs we have now do not live up to expectations in the spring. This is their chance to kind of prove themselves before these other young kids get on campus.
And I hate bringing this up because part of it is speculation, but, you bring it up, and I almost think back to Lane's first summer, kind of that break between spring and summer camp, where we saw guys like Gerard Ward leave, Richie Kittles leave, guys who had seen playing time in Charlie's final year. I mean, Kittles Kittle's had, I think, 40-something tackles Charlie's final year, and then he transferred out because it became apparent that he wasn't going to get the reps that maybe he would have gone under Charlie or that maybe he thought he was going to get. Now, I'm not saying that somebody like James Charles is a definite transfer candidate. You never know. But there are guys that are kind of on the hot seat only in the sense that if they don't play above expectations in the spring, there's not going to be room for them come the summer in terms of first-team action or rotational action.
I find it a big mystery FAU right now isn't taking a quarterback. And I'm a believer, no matter what your quarterback situation is, you take one every year. You just look at the situation Florida State's in right now.
Right.
They've recruited since 2013. Every quarterback they've recruited has left campus early.
I saw that. That's an insane. That's an insane statistic.
We're going back 5 years.
To John Franklin.
Yeah, I mean, you got to take one every year because, if Tronti is a former Mr. Florida player. If he comes out and plays great, or if Robinson takes that step forward in the spring and completely owns the position, you better believe someone else is transferring.
I think that recruiting the quarterback has changed because of the transfer portal. Because now, if a four-star guy let's say a four-star guy goes to Florida State, and he doesn't play as much as he wants to his freshman year. Okay, he's going to transfer out, and maybe he goes G5 now because the NCAA has gotten better with these hardship waivers. So you wind up with a situation like Tronti. Tronti redshirts his first year. He transfers to a G5, applies for eligibility. He gets his eligibility. Although Tronti only played one game last year, if Robinson was hurt with a severe injury and then Peavy and Johnson were both bad, who knows? And I know that Lane said to us that Tronti was always a 2019 guy.
Again, just take one every year because eventually not all three quarterbacks on our roster right now are going to stay the whole time. Jake and I try and cover this every day. We don't hear anything on the quarterback front.
And I would be fine with FAU saying, you know what, we have two guys who began their careers at P5, and the third, Little John, who was committed to Illinois for a while and who maybe has the raw talent to play for a P5. So let's focus on adding a couple walk-ons just to have that depth. Just have that depth so that you can have the two practices. And then once you get into the season, you say, okay, maybe Robinson's not the guy, and maybe somebody's going to leave. Yeah. And you start changing up. I don't think that they needed a 3-star, 4-star guy this class just because of the other three guys and how good they are right now and what they can become.
Don't waste scholarships. Like recruiting 101. Don't just take a guy to fill a spot. If you're going to take a quarterback, take someone you think can really play. It's
exactly.
You never reach. Yeah. Yes, you have plans A and B in recruiting, but you just never reach.
To close off, guys, I know both of y'all have your sources, okay? If you guys want to say any names or say who we should be looking out for, it's up to you. If not, we all understand. But if you guys have a hunch about anyone that hasn't committed yet that maybe Owl Nation should keep an eye for, what do you guys say?
I'm gonna post something on the Nest. I know there's a few names, and of course there'll be a few surprises. There's a few kids hanging out there that I've probably never even heard of that will end up saying I'm committed to FAU. For those who don't know, Lane and FAU likes to keep their recruitment as quiet as humanly possible. They're very, they don't want anything out there. Also I know. Jake and I both know of kids that are committed now that just haven't announced yet. But
right.
We both have
and it's not our place to announce it.
It's their moment. Let them enjoy their signing day at their school and pick their hat up. Yeah. Some names to look out for. I think the top one right now is JD Martin from Alabama. He's announcing 9 a.m. local time. He's a really highly recruited kid. I spoke to him on the phone. He loved his visit. Again, this is coming out later. He said he was going to visit Louisville. It was between us and Louisville. I don't know if he visited Louisville this past weekend. So I don't know. Nothing's been reported. I think that's a good sign. And I mentioned Ty Edwards. I know it's been reported he's on campus. The rumor out there is that we're the only ones really saying, hey, you can come here and play running back.
Yeah.
A couple guys have come out and said we're in our top 2. A couple defensive linemen. So
multiple people.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of top names out there. I mean, I was shocked when Glover Cook was on campus. I'm sitting here thinking FAU's recruiting Kemo Clark, his counterpart, the entire time, and Glover Cook's on campus, and he would be a 4th running back. But a lot of people, like I could say, he could play receiver or do other things. So maybe you just get an athlete like that on campus and almost like figure it out later. Just take the talent and we'll find a place for you.
I'm going to give you a lineman, Darius Tolliver from Atuga. I think I'm saying that right. Atuga Academy up in Alabama. FAU is putting the full court press to get this kid. Lane and a couple definitely Lane. I think a couple coaches went with him last week to go visit up at the school.
Yeah.
If FAU gets this kid, he's one of the best linemen in the state of Alabama. He's 7'3", 320.
Yeah.
Get a kid like that.
They're putting the press on because a couple of linemen have not worked out. We saw Cartwright committed to North Carolina A&T. I think the writing was on the wall. What kind of happened there is, when you see some of these kids go to FCS, so not that they've missed, but I said this after the early signing period when they didn't really take any O linemen or D linemen, that these positions become hard to find late. Everyone's looking for big bodies right now.
So that's it. So you guys thinking that this could definitely finish off as a top 2, top 3 Conference USA recruiting class? Yes?
Yeah, I think if they get half the kids we've kind of talked about, I know there were some numbers for the FE really kind of look 26, 27. Lane can always keep a couple scholarships if he feels comfortable for that summer transfer. I think kind of when the dust settle in Conference USA and 247 Sports and the other outlets catch up on their ratings, we'll have a top 3 class.
Perfect. You agree, Jake?
Yeah, obviously with some, I mean this in the nicest way possible. I think some of the recruiting outlets, it's a little subjective because one guy could say, yeah, Johnny's a 4-star. Another guy could say, well, looking at his competition, he's maybe only a 2-star. But, you look at the talent, the raw talent, you look at who's on campus now, what they've done to address their holes. It might not say on 247 it's a top 2 class, but I think in terms of results a couple years down the line, this could be one of the best classes, not only in Conference USA, but in the recent FAU history.
Perfect. So thank you, both of you guys, for coming on, talking about National Signing Day 2019. Jake, all fans know Jake from the Palm Beach Post. Best of luck to you covering signing day on Wednesday. But I'm going to have to do a plug for Owl's Nest. Make sure you're following along on the website and on our social media, especially Twitter, to get all of the up-to-date information on all of the recruits. It's going to be an exciting day, guys. I can't wait. For Shane and Jake, thanks so much for watching. Signing off. Go Owls.